Okay, so Vancouver,
Yeah.
I mean, I think about Vancouver, it's almost like that classic postcard image, right?
Right.
The city kind of tucked right up against those beautiful mountains and the Pacific Ocean. It's a place that I think a lot of us dream of visiting at some point.
Oh, absolutely. And if you're one of those people dreaming of visiting, then you are definitely in the right place because we've been diving deep into a video all about Vancouver, and it comes from Creative Travel Guide.
Nice.
So think of this as like your cheat sheet. Okay, we're going to pull out all of the need-to-know info to help you plan an amazing trip to Vancouver. So our mission today is pretty simple.
Okay.
We just want to make sure you walk away with some solid insider knowledge about everything from the absolute best time to visit to the best ways to get around, and also how to manage your budget. You know, being smart with money. And then, of course, we've got to talk about the must-do experiences,
right.
You know, the things that are really going to make this trip unforgettable. So are you ready to dive in?
I am ready. Let's do it.
Oh.
So I guess first things first, according to the guide, when should we be thinking about booking that trip if we want that like quintessential Vancouver experience?
Well, if you're picturing yourself like, you know, enjoying some really nice warm weather and just soaking up the sun, then you're going to want to aim for June to September.
Okay.
Because that's when the weather is at its best and you get those long sunny days.
Yeah.
The guide says you can expect around 13 hours of daylight, which is pretty amazing.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. Yeah, so that's perfect for all the outdoor activities that Vancouver is so famous for.
Yeah.
You know, hiking and biking, exploring those beautiful beaches.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. So if that's what you're after, that's the time to go.
That sounds amazing. But I'm guessing there's got to be like a trade-off for all that sunshine, right?
Yeah, there is a bit of a trade-off.
Yeah.
As you can imagine, it's also the most popular time to visit.
Right.
So while the weather is absolutely glorious, you'll also be sharing those attractions, you know, with a lot more tourists. So it's something to keep in mind if you're somebody who prefers a bit of a quieter experience.
Gotcha. Yeah. So what if you are looking for something a little less crowded, maybe a little more off the beaten path? When would you recommend?
Then you might want to consider March to May.
Okay.
Because that's when things are a bit quieter, the weather's still pleasant, and, you know, there are definitely fewer tourists around.
Yeah.
And there's another bonus, too. The city's parks and gardens really come alive with those beautiful spring flowers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's a really lovely sight. So it's a great option if you know, appreciate a more relaxed pace.
That sounds beautiful, like a floral escape with fewer crowds.
Exactly.
I love it. Okay, so now I'm thinking about all of us out there who are trying to, you know, be smart with our money, be savvy with our spending.
Right.
When would be the most budget-friendly time to go to Vancouver?
Well, if saving money on accommodation is your top priority, then October and November are the months to aim for.
Okay.
Because that's when hotel rates tend to be lower. You know, it's the shoulder season, so things are quieting down.
Right.
Now you'll want to be prepared for cooler temperatures and potentially rainier weather.
Right.
But hey, you know, if saving money is a big factor, then this could be a really smart choice.
Yeah, sometimes a little drizzle is a small price to pay for saving money.
Exactly.
All right, so we've talked about sunny weather, we've talked about spring flowers, we've talked about budget-friendly options. What about those folks who are specifically going to Vancouver for the winter sports?
Oh, yeah, the powder hounds.
Yeah.
So if hitting the slopes is what you're after, then December to February is your window.
Perfect.
Prime time for skiing and snowboarding on those amazing mountains near Vancouver.
Makes sense. Okay, so we have a really clear picture now, I think, of when to go, depending on, you know, what you're looking for.
Right.
Let's move on to the next step, which is actually getting there.
Yeah. How do we get to Vancouver?
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of us, that's probably going to mean a flight, right?
Most likely. Yeah, Vancouver International Airport, or YVR as it's known.
Mm.
It's super conveniently located, just a short 25-minute drive from downtown.
Okay.
And it handles a ton of international flights, especially from the U.S. Yeah. So it's very easy to get to.
And once you land at YVR, what's the best way to get into the city?
Well, you've got a couple of really good options.
Mm-hmm.
Taxis are readily available right there at the airport.
Okay.
You'll find them at the designated taxi stand on level 2.
Okay.
But a lot of people find that the SkyTrain is actually quicker.
Okay.
And more convenient. It's a rapid transit train. It's called the Canada Line, and it takes you directly to downtown Vancouver. And it also goes to parts of Richmond as well. So it's a really good link.
So you can basically get public transportation right from the airport.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. What about those people who might be thinking about a road trip, you know, maybe renting a car or even like bringing an RV?
Oh, yeah, that's a classic way to see Canada.
Yeah.
And the guide actually highlights the Trans-Canada Highway as being a really scenic route.
Oh, wow.
for driving to Vancouver.
Yeah.
And it definitely gives you a chance to see more of British Columbia's incredible scenery along the way.
Right.
So, yeah, that's a great option if you want to explore a bit beyond just the city itself.
It sounds like a really cool adventure. And what about those folks who prefer to just sit back, relax, enjoy the journey?
Well, there's always train travel.
Oh, right. Yeah.
The guide specifically mentions the Rocky Mountaineer,
Okay.
which is famous for its, absolutely spectacular views
Yeah.
of the British Columbia landscape. So that's a really cool way to travel.
Right.
And if you're coming from the Pacific Northwest of the U.S., you can also take Amtrak.
Oh.
They have services from Portland and Seattle.
So no shortage of ways to get to Vancouver?
Not at all.
Okay, so let's say we've arrived, we're in Vancouver. How easy is it to actually get around the city itself?
Well, Vancouver's a big city. It's got those sprawling suburbs. But the downtown area itself is actually quite compact.
Okay.
And the guide describes it as being very walkable. So that's great news for exploring at your own pace.
Yeah.
And, discovering those little hidden gems.
Yeah, that's my favorite way to explore a city. Just kind of wander around and see what you find.
Exactly.
But what about if you do want to venture a bit further afield, or if your feet just get tired?
Well, then cycling is a super popular option
Yeah.
in Vancouver. And the city has bike rentals available pretty much everywhere you look.
Okay.
The guide does give a couple of safety reminders, though.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to remember that sidewalk riding is not allowed in Vancouver.
Okay.
And you always want to make sure you're wearing a helmet.
Good advice, safety first.
Absolutely.
So we've got walking, we've got biking. What about public transportation?
Oh, Vancouver has a fantastic public transportation system. It's called TransLink.
Okay.
And it's super reliable and affordable.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so they've got a really comprehensive bus network.
Okay.
They've got the SkyTrain, which we talked about before, that elevated rapid transit.
Right.
And then they have a really cool ferry service called the Sea Bus.
I've heard about the sea bus. I think it's supposed to be beautiful.
It is. It's a really scenic connection between downtown and the North Shore.
Okay.
So if you're planning to use public transportation a lot, the guide recommends getting a Compass card.
Okay.
It's a reloadable card that you can use for single fares or day passes on all of the TransLink services.
So it's kind of like an all-in-one for public transport.
Yeah, exactly. And it can save you a bit of money compared to buying individual tickets each time.
That's good to know. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here: walking, biking, public transportation. What about those times when maybe public transportation just isn't the most direct or the most convenient option? Are there other ways to get around?
Oh, for sure. Taxis are readily available all over the city.
Right.
And ride-sharing services like Lyft and Uber.
Of course.
They operate in Vancouver, too, so that's another option if you need a direct route or if you're going a longer distance.
Perfect. What about renting a car once you're there? Is that something that's recommended?
Yeah, the guide suggests that renting a car is a good idea if you're planning to explore those amazing national parks and other natural attractions that are outside of the city.
Right.
So it really depends on what your itinerary looks like and how much you want to venture beyond Vancouver itself.
Makes sense.
Yeah, if you're mostly staying in the city, you might find you don't really need a car at all because you've got so many other options.
Right. All right, so we've covered how to get there, how to get around now. Let's talk about something that I think is always top of mind for travelers, which is Vancouver has a little bit of a reputation, I think, for being on the pricier side. Is that accurate?
Yeah, unfortunately, it is. Like a lot of major Canadian cities, Vancouver can be a bit expensive.
Oh.
The guide acknowledges that right up front.
Right.
But to give you a better idea of what to expect, it breaks down some typical costs in Canadian dollars so you can start to plan your budget.
Okay, perfect. So let's start with the big one, accommodation. How much should people be expecting to pay for different types of lodging?
All right, so if you're on a tight budget, you can find hostel dorm beds starting from around 54 Canadian dollars.
Okay.
And the guide says you can even find some in pretty good locations.
Oh, okay. It's not bad at all.
No, it's not bad if you want a bit more privacy, though. Private rooms in hostels start around $130.
Okay.
And then moving up to hotels, mid-range 3-star options usually start at about $200 per night.
Right.
And then if you're looking for something more luxurious, you're probably looking at starting prices of around $280.
And of course, it can go up from there.
Oh, yeah. You can definitely find some very high-end hotels in Vancouver.
So a pretty wide range to suit different budgets, but definitely something to factor into your planning.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk food, because, eating out can really add up when you're traveling.
Yeah.
How much should people budget for that?
Yeah, it's a big part of the travel budget for sure.
Yeah.
So let's break it down.
Okay.
If you're looking for a quick and cheap breakfast, something on the go, a place like Tim Hortons will cost you around $5.
Okay, classic Tim Hortons.
Yeah, but if you're sitting down for brunch, you're probably looking at least $20 per person.
Okay.
Lunch will also generally be in that $20 range. And then a sit-down dinner, you're looking at around $35 to start.
Okay.
But as the guide says, it can definitely go way beyond that.
Right, depending on where you go.
Exactly.
Okay, so those are some pretty realistic numbers to keep in mind. Now let's talk about the fun part, which is how can we actually save some money on our trip to Vancouver? We've talked about costs, but are there ways to be smart about it?
Oh, absolutely. There are tons of ways to save money without, sacrificing the quality of your trip. So the guide offers a few really practical tips.
Okay.
First of all, when it comes to getting around her, remember, walking is free.
Right.
And especially in the downtown core, it's a great way to explore. So walk whenever you can.
Good advice.
Another tip is to consider staying in those mid-range hotels that are located just outside the downtown area,
Okay.
but are still easily accessible by the SkyTrain. That can often save you a lot of money on accommodation.
That's a great tip.
Yeah, and you can still get around easily.
Right.
So you're not really sacrificing anything.
Okay, so that's a good strategy, using public transport to your advantage when you're choosing where to stay. What about the cost of actually getting to Vancouver?
Well, when it comes to flights, you always want to shop around.
Of course.
Use those comparison websites.
Right.
See what deals you can find. But the guide recommends looking into budget airlines like WestJet
Okay.
because they often have more affordable fares compared to the full-service carriers.
Right, so look at all your options.
Exactly.
What about food? Are there any insider tips for eating well without, going over budget?
Oh, for sure. One thing the guide suggests is to look for those Asian restaurants
Okay.
because they can often be a more budget-friendly way to get a delicious meal.
Interesting.
And keep an eye out for happy hour deals at bars.
Of course.
Yeah, that's always a good way to save money on drinks.
Right.
And sometimes even on appetizers.
Happy hour is the best.
It is.
Okay, what about seeing the sights? Are there any cost-effective ways to experience the main attractions?
Definitely. The guide mentions a couple of options.
Okay.
One is the Vancouver 24 or 48-hour hop-off sightseeing bus ticket.
Right.
Which is great because it not only provides transportation to all the key attractions, but it also gives you that guided commentary as you're going around.
Okay.
So you're learning about the city.
Perfect.
And then the other option is the Vancouver Attraction Passport.
Okay.
And this one can actually save you quite a lot of money, like up to 50%, on admission to over 50 different attractions and restaurants.
That's incredible.
Right. So that's a really good one if you're planning on hitting a lot of different spots.
Right, and I'm guessing the guide probably links to all of those resources?
Yeah, they usually provide links so you can check out the details and see if it makes sense for your trip.
Perfect. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. When to go, how to get there, how to get around, how to save some money. Now, let's get to the really exciting part. What are some of the absolute must-see, must-do things in Vancouver?
Okay, let's talk about the fun stuff.
Yes.
You cannot go to Vancouver without visiting Stanley Park.
Right.
It is iconic. It's got that beautiful botanical garden, a fantastic aquarium, stunning beaches, you name it, it's all there.
Yeah.
And the guide specifically recommends biking along the exterior seawall
Oh, yeah.
because it gives you those amazing views.
I've heard it's one of the best urban bike rides in the world.
Yeah, it's supposed to be absolutely stunning.
Okay, so that's Stanley Park. What else is on the list?
Another spot that sounds amazing is Granville Island.
Okay.
And this is known for its really lively public market, which is full of, local produce and artisan goods.
Right.
And then there's a bunch of restaurants, artist studios, and galleries as well.
Oh, wow.
So it's a really vibrant place to just kind of soak up the local culture and sample some great food.
Definitely on the list. Okay, what about something a little different, a little more off the beaten path?
Well, if you're looking for a really unique experience and you love food,
I do.
then you have to check out the Richmond Night Market.
Okay.
It runs from May to October, and it is packed with all kinds of incredible food stalls.
Oh, wow.
So you can sample all different kinds of Asian cuisine.
Yeah.
And it's a super lively atmosphere as well.
I love a good night market.
Yeah, they're so much fun.
Okay, so we've got some lively options. What about something a bit more tranquil, a bit more peaceful?
Well, for that, I would recommend the Dr. Sun Yat-sen Classical Chinese Garden.
Okay.
It's located right on the edge of Chinatown.
Oh.
And it's just this beautiful little oasis in the middle of the city.
Oh, that's nice.
It's a great place to escape the hustle and bustle for a little while.
That sounds lovely. A little pocket of tranquility. Okay, so now I'm thinking about those experiences that are really, memorable, maybe once in a lifetime kind of things. Is there anything like that that's recommended?
Well, the guide actually highly recommends going whale watching.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Getting out on the water and seeing those magnificent creatures up close is supposed to be absolutely incredible.
It sounds breathtaking.
It does.
Okay, what about something a little more local, maybe a sporting event or something like that?
You got to catch a hockey game.
Of course.
Yeah, head to Rogers Arena and experience Canada's national sport.
You can't go to Canada without seeing a hockey game.
Exactly.
Okay, what about some really cool views of the city? I always love finding those spots where you can see everything laid out before you. Are there any places like that in Vancouver?
Yeah, Grouse Mountain's the place to go for that.
Okay.
You can take a gondola up to the top, and it's called the Peak of Vancouver.
Right. I've seen photos. It looks incredible.
Yeah, the views are just breathtaking from up there.
Okay, so for those who are more interested in culture and history and things like that, what would you recommend?
Well, Vancouver's got some really great museums.
Okay.
So the guide recommends exploring at least one of those, whether you're into art or history or science. There's something for everyone.
Yeah, a good reminder that there's something to cater to all interests.
Exactly.
Okay, so last one. Are there any other recommendations for getting out into nature? We've talked about Stanley Park, but are there other places worth exploring?
For sure. Lynn Canyon is a really cool spot.
Okay.
It's got these really impressive suspension bridges.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then Pacific Spirit Regional Park is a great place for a peaceful walk.
So you've got kind of the best of both worlds, right? The urban adventures and then those nature escapes.
Exactly.
It really does sound like Vancouver has something for everyone.
It truly does. And, as we've seen from this deep dive into the Creative Travel Guide video, planning a trip to Vancouver doesn't have to be overwhelming.
Right.
If you understand the best time to go based on what you want to do, you know how to get there, how to get around, and you've got a good sense of the costs and how to save some money, and then, of course, you have a list of those must-do activities, then you are well on your way to creating an amazing Vancouver experience.
I love it. And what I love about this is that we are getting this information from travel experts.
Right.
These aren't just our opinions. This is stuff that, folks who really know Vancouver have put together.
Exactly. It's tried and true.
Yeah. So I think this gives our listeners a really fantastic starting point for planning their own Vancouver adventure.
Absolutely.
So as you think about, making that trip a reality, start to consider how you're going to balance your budget with those experiences that you absolutely don't want to miss.
Right.
And also, think about whether you want that vibrant energy of peak season or maybe the quieter charm of those shoulder seasons. It really comes down to your travel style, what works for you.
Absolutely.
It's all part of crafting that perfect Vancouver trip.
Yeah. Your own personal deep dive into the city.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Well said.
I like it.
All right. Thanks for diving deep with me today.
My pleasure.
And to all of you listening out there, happy travels.
Safe travels, everyone.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.
See you then.
Bye.